what Starfield means for Elder Scrolls 6. Nothing good, that's for certain.
Welcome back to Fudge Muppet. My name is Scott, and we love the Elder Scrolls. It was what this channel started on back in 2013. And it began as just us sharing our passion for the characters we created in the game. And
That's
back
cool.
then, man, I had no idea how long the wait would be for Elder Scrolls 6. We have been balls deep in Elder Scrolls lore for so long. Nary a stone unturned, but for the drip feed of new lore added by a yearly ESO expansion. The Elder Scrolls desperately needs a new game. Starfield, their very first IP in over 25 years, has been a great success. Skyrim in space is a neat
How do these people understand great success? You know what I saw yesterday on Twitter? A bunch of Xbox fanboys saying, oh, well, if you look at Xbox, they're actually making more in profits than the other companies. And you're saying Xbox is failing? Well, yeah. If you're making more of a profit margin, that doesn't necessarily mean you're making good games. No one's buying an Xbox. Only the fanboys care about the Xbox currently. Everyone else couldn't care less. Well, I guess there's a bunch of PlayStation fanboys who are still on about it. But in general, no one cares about Xbox. Or any console, for that matter. But yeah, Xbox hasn't had a single good game in forever. And I know someone's gonna start listing shitty game releases that the Xbox has had.
catchphrase to describe it, but really it is far more like a mix of Fallout 3 or New Vegas and Oblivion in terms of gameplay feel. It is a Bethesda RPG through and through, set in space and with...
That means it's pretty shit, essentially. That's what it means when people are comparing Starfield to a Bethesda game. Not a game in general, but a Bethesda game. Like a handicapped child.
We love it. They've also made their intentions clear that they intend to support the game with updates, DLC, and modding support. There's lots of...
Yeah, I'm gonna call lies on that one. Bethesda is never gonna update this game. They did one patch for this game, and that's honestly one patch more than any other game has ever gotten. Bethesda only does one patch for any game they release, aka if there's anything that prevents you from playing the game. Some kind of super story bug, something that locks you into not being able to finish the game or play the game. That's the only thing Bethesda will ever patch. Other than that, the modders will fix it.
Of exciting stuff in store, and if you are loving Starfield, then do be sure to subscribe because we have all kinds of content coming your way, including role-playing builds for which we are known. But this brings us to Elder Scrolls.
I don't know, Chief. Role-playing builds in a game where the dialogue options were written by a 7-year-old? Oof, I don't know if I want to play a role-playing build there. It sounds sad. The dialogues are so bad.
6. Ultimately, this is Bethesda's next focus. Can you believe that it was over 5 years ago that the teaser trailer for it was released? Kinda crazy. I used to think, imagine if I had kids before Elder Scrolls 6. Then I thought, well, I guess I'll have young kids for Elder Scrolls 6. Now I have 2 daughters that will be in the midst of primary school by the time Elder Scrolls 6 comes out, which in the best case scenario it seems is 2028. Keep those fingers crossed, because I'd hope so. I guess they don't have to make a new engine this time, but what can Starfield tell us about Elder Scrolls?
Yeah, that's not good. Starfield graphics are blatant trash. And you know what what's the problem with Starfield, honestly, if you have played this game? It's the fact that every single room has like 50 trillion objects in it that you can't interact and they're just cluttered. Every single location has 15 tarps on the ground, 20 boxes that can't be looted, accessed, or anything, 5 buckets, and more shit. And way more shit. It's just... When Bethesda started, their games were super simplistic. You entered the house, there was a loading screen, and there was a chair and a bed maybe. Maybe a table if you're lucky, and a bowl. A bowl, never forget about the bowls. Now it's a loading screen, followed by another loading screen, followed by a small 1x1 room that has 3 trillion different items in it that none are interactable. And that's what Elder Scrolls 6 is gonna look like. It's gonna be an over-cluttered mess of shit. With bad dialogue.
6. If you've enjoyed Bethesda games for a long while, you can track the progress of their design decisions bleeding across franchises. For example, when Bethesda took on the Fallout franchise and created Fallout 3, it had perks like the previous games in the series, Fallout 1 and Fallout 2.
Makes
sense.
And
so as we got to Skyrim, we also got for the first time the introduction of perks into the Elder Scrolls because it worked so well in Fallout 3. Previously, extra effects or abilities...
I mean...
things like a...
I understand where he's coming from, but this is also a very bad thing about Starfield, is the fact that Starfield is pretty much in all aspects 1 step forward, 2 steps backward. Starfield has taken the worst of the perk system of any game. It essentially has taken the perks of Fallout New Vegas and the passive buff system that you get in Fallout New Vegas. You know, when you use 100 stimpaks heal you for 10% more. When you kill 100 wildlife, you deal 5% damage more to wildlife. Starfield took these things and combined it into one. They made it that you can only upgrade certain things when you do certain X amount of times, and, well, the talents are just boring. Starfield, 99.9% of the talent tree is just, well, here's a 5% increase in something. And if we're talking about damage increases, they're bugged, by the way. Yeah, leveling up ballistics does nothing. Because it's fucking bugged, obviously, because it's a Bethesda game. Yeah. You know, and Starfield does this a lot. Okay? Starfield does this a lot. 90% of the game is pretty much locked by skill trees. In Skyrim, the nice thing about skill trees was the fact that you could level them up by, you know, just playing the game, and you weren't locked in anything, honestly. You were not locked away from any real choices in the game, but Starfield locks you out of almost everything.
Backflip for acrobatics in Oblivion came from simply leveling the acrobatics skill. There are other examples like this, but for this reason I think it's hard to imagine that Bethesda won't be pulling heavy from Starfield, learning what works and what doesn't, and implementing these lessons into Elder Scrolls 6. For the same reasons I am loving
By the way, that companion just shot them through the door. In case you just missed that one.
Starfield, I am more confident on Bethesda's return to form and ability to hit Elder Scrolls 6 out of the park. Starfield has the implementation of backgrounds and traits, as well as the choices and lots of dialogue options, all of which is on par with Fallout New Vegas. To read,
how fucking dare you, Fudge Muppet, you absolute... I'm unsubscribing. And you should do too. The idea that you can compare Fallout New Vegas writing, dialogue, options, and outcomes with this absolute blasphemous piece of shit game is unthinkable. Like, they're not even in the same dimension. Starfield was written by an autistic 7-year-old at best, and then quality checked by an 88-year-old who's already dead. Heresy.
Iterate, that is, the options are on par, not necessarily the writing itself, though even
the
still...
The options are not on par. The options are absolutely not on par. Show me a single situation in Starfield where anything where you have a choice to finish off something in a different way. There isn't. Your only choices in Starfield ever are yes, no, shoot them, don't shoot them, talk to them, and they give it to you. That's it. Those are the only choices in Starfield. Not a single quest you do in the game will impact another outcome of a quest or option of a quest. Everything is a literal line, and they never converge.
Bethesda has done, in my opinion. Consistently, the backgrounds, traits, skills I have, and even the factions I've joined have opened up new dialogue options and unique experiences across...
No, they haven't. That's a lie. Well, maybe they open up, like, 2 new dialogue options. Sure. Yeah, okay, I admit it. They probably opened 2 new dialogue options in the whole game. Yeah, I'm sure.
Characters. This attention to detail and vastness of options applied to the Elder Scrolls just gets me giddy. Being able to have your chosen race, a background, which factions you belong to, and your skills factor into dialogue on top of a persuasion system, which I am sure will be implemented into an Elder Scrolls 6, just sounds...
Hopefully not, because the persuasion system is stupid. The persuasion system, and I thought at first that it's gonna be a good system. Because I thought, wait a minute, you need to actually listen to the characters and then manipulate them and play them. And that's my jazz. But no, the persuasion system is still roll dice and see what happens.
So awesome. Starfield has the Bethesda RPG formula, but done better. Imagine if this was in
That's a
Skyrim.
lie.
For example, I could pick a Wood Elf, which opens up the options for dialogue that a Bosmer may know about. On top of this, I pick a background which confers several skill bonuses at the start. Say I pick Knight, and so I would have all these dialogue options open up regarding my background, allowing me to use unique dialogue amongst other knights or lords, and allow...
Yeah, and okay, I'll give the counter argument in the same vein. Now imagine if you don't want to be a knight, but only knights get to ride horses, and now you're locked out of being able to ride horse until like level 10, where you can finally get the level up perk to be able to finally ride a horse. That's the counter argument.
Allow me to, in dialogue, use my knighted status to gain entrance to places I would otherwise need to sneak into or require a silver tongue. On top of that, imagine the whole host of traits that could be available. Things including various religious and cultural backgrounds, some of which would be exclusive to certain races, as well as a bunch of others. They could even bring back star signs on top, but I imagine they are more gameplay-oriented bonuses rather than role-playing. Then again, imagine some really cool options that become available in the character creator if you have certain combinations. For example, say you choose Argonian as a race, and if you pick the Shadow as your star sign, then you can choose the Shadow scale background. Perhaps that fast tracks you to join the Dark Brotherhood and comes up in assassin-related quests. A really quick way to sample how this kind of thing could be implemented in Elder Scrolls 6, go to Starfield, play a character who has both the gangster and...
I mean, this sounds very great, but the truth is, you don't get any benefit from this. It's just a throwaway piece of dialogue that doesn't change the outcome of anything. That's the reality of this.
Neon street rat traits, and you'll see how much it improves your role-playing experience of that area. Character creation is one of
only that area that can be done in roughly 20 minutes.
The most personal, creative, and rewarding experiences in RPGs, and I really think they've done a great job in Starfield, and they should really just double down on this for Elder Scrolls 6. This is also why I think the Bethesda RPG formula is so successful and can work its wiles on you even if you are aware of its flaws. Bethesda synthesizes lots of systems and individual game elements really well, and then wraps them up in this addictive bundle which has been every single Bethesda game minus the black
This is why 30% of people did not get past the first hour of the game in playing Starfield? Because of this very well synthesized bundle of whatever? Seems right.
Sheep of the family, the travesty that was Fallout 76. But that aside, often if you take every single element of any of their games and stack them against another game, often one that has a particular focus, then it will mostly lose out. And there could be clear improvements to be made, often work that does get done by modders. However, a single element, say building a house or gunplay or what have you, is not how a game is experienced. A game is the sum of the parts, and that is what makes Bethesda games great. Want a fantasy RPG? The Witcher is awesome, but you have to be Geralt, and you have to, with some exceptions, wield 2 swords and be a monster hunter. But in Skyrim, you can be an orc or a Khajiit, you can ignore the main quest and go off the rails, you can be a thief, go join the College of Winterhold and master magic, do whatever you like, insert your own creativity onto the character. Determine your own experience. Is the Dark Brotherhood assassin experience as good as an assassin experience in a game like Dishonored? No, but you can be an assassin and then go build a house, adopt a kid, go dungeon delving in your spare time and become a vampire even, work with a Daedric prince. And that is the appeal of Bethesda's RPGs. It's lots of things stitched together, lots of options.
Yeah, that was the good part about Skyrim. Absolutely no doubt. That was the good part about a lot of other games like Fallout, the Fallout series and whatnot. But this is not the case for Starfield. Starfield has none of this garbage. Well, not garbage, of these good things. Starfield has, okay, you join the Crimson Fleet and what now? Nothing. Fucking nothing now. The quests you do with them don't even make you feel like a pirate. The quests you do with them are, one guy wants to betray your boss, and at no point you can just shoot the guy. You need to say no to him like 15 times and then he gets... It's so dumb. Like, why even join a faction? They're all the same shit. You know what happens if when you steal a Crimson Fleet? The same thing that happens not outside of the Crimson Fleet. They confiscate your stolen goods. Because guess what, asshole? As a pirate, you can't steal.
Providing you an immense sandbox to play in. I think this also factors into people's enjoyment of Starfield itself. There are just no other games that provide this exact kind of experience. I think there are many who...
I mean, that's true, but it's a really bad experience.
...did come into Starfield.
There's not a lot of games that are 70% waiting for loading screens and then 10% combat and the rest of the percent is going through cities and waiting until vendors have enough cash so you can sell shit.
Expecting a curated galaxy exploration game where that is the main focus of the game. And to be fair, I don't think Bethesda had the clearest marketing on this, but then everyone got a Bethesda RPG in space, which for people like us is amazing and exactly what we wanted.
Sad.
In fact, it was my big concern with Starfield. I was very cynical and wary of the game before it released, and I really wasn't digging the NASA punk aesthetic. Plus, I was salty knowing that this was between me and Elder Scrolls 6, but the game has changed my mind, and I truly think if you love the previous Fallout and Elder Scrolls games by Bethesda, then
Starfield is nothing like them.
You will love Starfield. But I also think there is an adjustment period with
Starfield's biggest achievement, if we're being honest, was forcing people to go and play No Man's Sky. Starfield was the best advertisement for No Man's Sky ever could have gotten. And same for Cyberpunk. Because people are kind of split. People want the space exploration, and Starfield has none of that. There is literally no space exploration in Starfield. I'm not even going to say it's bad. I'm just going to say it's not dead. Because it isn't dead. There's nothing to find. There's nothing to explore. End of story. So, those people now went to play Starfield. And those people who wanted a futuristic combat thing went to Cyberpunk now. Starfield was great at advertising other games by accident of being so bad.
Starfield because of one drastic change, and that is it spans the settled systems with multiple planets separated by space versus a single traversable map. And this does have a different feel, for better in some aspects and for worse in others. But this is the trade-off that is...
You gotta give it to Starfield though for using Logan Paul's Crypto Zoo art for their creature inspiration. Very original.
It's pretty much essential to the Bethesda RPG formula when applied to a space game. Flying from one system to another manually, if it were possible, is not fun. There's nothing to do in empty space.
This is a stupid argument. Yes, there is nothing to do in empty space. But one, how about Bethesda, adds things in space so it's not empty? How about that? And two, knowing that I cannot travel the space is a downside. Even if it's empty, just knowing the fact that I can travel in space is huge because it just makes my immersion, my experience better. It's the same for, walking around the world. Some people are saying, some people like the Ackman said, well, why would you want to walk around an empty planet? Well, first of all, Bethesda shouldn't have made the planets empty. There should be more decorations than rocks on planets, in my opinion, honest. I know that's maybe a little bit too much to ask from Bethesda, but I do honestly think so. And second of all, again, the fact that I know that I can do the traveling is what I want. Obviously no one's gonna actually make a round trip around the world, or fly from a planet to planet, because that's stupid and pointless. But knowing that you can is the big one.
Even No Man's Sky has a hyperdrive to take you from system to system because, as you would imagine, the empty void of space would not actually be fun to travel through for 10 minutes or more of game time. It's not like traveling across Skyrim where you might actually come across something interesting. Now, mind you, I'm not kidding myself. Being able to travel from planet to planet within a star system freely, like in No Man's Sky, would be better for sure. However, it isn't essential to the core of what a Bethesda RPG is. Sometimes I feel as if it's similar to complaining that Mass Effect, a sci-fi RPG, doesn't let you fly the Normandy between planets, or at all. These are RPG games in a sci-fi setting, not specifically space games like No Man's Sky or Star Citizen. But Elder Scrolls 6 won't have this problem, because, well, it's on the single landmass of Tamriel.
Oh, maybe they're gonna try and make it realistic by having nothing to do while you're traveling. I'm waiting for some Bethesda fanboy to say.
One big thing to consider is the scale. There is no turning back. I mean, even for myself, the cities, for example, feel much better to me filled with random citizens alongside more specific NPCs.
What do you mean random citizens? They all look the same almost. It's shitty. All the cities also look the fucking exact same. The only difference is how dirty the streets are. That's it. Okay? This city's streets are clean. There's no plastic bags on the sides. Other cities, just dirtier. It's the same shit, different color.
As opposed
There's
to
literally no uniqueness between the cities.
Small village of Whiterun and Solitude. Of course, these games are products of their time, but I would expect that for Elder Scrolls 6, the cities will be like this. Like Novigrad and The Witcher, cities feeling massive is really cool. There are so many things from Starfield that we could expect in the Elder Scrolls 6. Take settlement building, for example. Skyrim dipped its toes in the water with the Hearthfire DLC, and Fallout 4 doubled down on this, and while the settlement building was really cool, it felt as if a lot of the potentially interesting locations just became settlement spots.
Also, by the way, in Starfield, the cities are just big to be big. They don't actually hold anything interesting in them. They're pretty fucking boring and dull. They're just big, so Bethesda can say, "Oh, this is our biggest city yet." That's it. That's it. They're not actually big. They're just made spacious with a lot of travel time in between locations you want to be, so they can say it's big. That's it.
And the whole system felt more pushed on you with the whole Minutemen thing. Whereas in Starfield, you can build a settlement anywhere, and it feels far more optional, which is how I like it. But in the Elder Scrolls 6, if we have the ability to set up a camp anywhere, or build a house or castle anywhere, it would be pretty amazing. There are lore and in-universe implications for this, but that's also awesome. For example, maybe you can't actually start building a fort or castle-like structure unless you have some sort of Thane equivalent title. Like you need to be a baron to have the rights to do that. Or perhaps you can try to do so illegally, but the ruler of the lands will send guards to arrest you. To be able to be a knight-type character, to work your way to the title of baron and build a castle for yourself is really awesome. Or hell, depending on how far they take the options, maybe you could even through some of
By the way, just in this video, I also want to just point out how disingenuous the things he shows here are. For example, this planet right here. It probably took him 2 hours to find something that looks like this, amongst the literal nothing that is Starfield. It probably legitimately took multiple hours to find this location, because everything's just a barren rock with nothing. And in the meantime, we have seen only a couple of the very few examples that are not barren rocks of nothing. So, getting this footage most likely took multiple hours of gameplay to find planets that are not just empty rocks. And by the way, this is also empty. You think that there should be something here because that's what Fallout and Skyrim have taught you to expect, but the reality is, from here to, for example, the top of that mountain, there is never a single reason to stop or not run in a straight line, because there is gonna be nothing. There is absolutely nothing. Even if there is anything else but rock in the map, it's still a bunch of nothing.
The faction storylines, become king of a city or some other powerful position that warrants you an actual city castle. Like, imagine if in Skyrim you could actually become the Jarl of Whiterun after deposing him if you sided with the Stormcloaks. Becoming a king is some pretty intense fantasy role-playing, a hell of a power fantasy. Same deal with making some sort of criminal hideout or den. You could hire bandits and actually be a bandit leader, but guards or other mercenaries will try and take it out, but at the same time you gain gold and plunder that your bandits go out and get for you. There is just so much role-playing opportunity for a settlement system in Elder Scrolls 6. Another precedent that has been set, or rather reset, is maneuverability of your character. Through the gymnastics skill in Starfield, acrobatics has essentially made a return, so you can play a sneaky ninja character, and the boost pack has obviously completely transformed traversal in this respect. And so in an Elder Scrolls...
Okay, how are you going to implement a boost back in, a medieval fantasy setting with magic?
6, I can absolutely imagine that an acrobatic skill will be returning, and let's also think about the implications for this in terms of magic and mounts. The levitate spell should absolutely have a return, and now the precedent has been set with the boost pack in Starfield, I absolutely expect levitate and other sorts of maneuverability magic to be there. Boosts to acrobatics or slow fall type spells shouldn't functionally
to be
all
fair,
that
that's a decent expectation.
Different to a low-gravity world in Starfield. So I can actually visualize the implementation of this, but also think about the possibility of unique mounts, like griffins, which were introduced into the lore in ESO. Imagine Thalmor soldiers riding griffins, shooting at you with a bow or hurling magic. Sky combat doesn't seem so unlikely anymore, considering that they have made space battles a thing in Starfield. Were vultures, anyone?
Wait, what do you mean? Starfield space combat is probably one of the weakest parts of the game, my dude.
Being able to turn into one and fly around the map. And look, that is the other big thing to re-emphasize. The scale. They can go big. They've done it with Starfield, though it is segmented across planets. But all put in the one world map, it could be incredible. And along with that, I think it's very important.
I don't think the engine can handle it. People were commenting about this, that, just try flying in Skyrim and, the engine can barely hold itself together when that's happening. So, it's probably not going to be an option for Elder Scrolls 6, because keep in mind, this is the same engine. Starfield runs on the same engine that Skyrim plays on. So, Elder Scrolls 6, 4 years later into the future, in the best of scenarios, is going to be made on a very literal 20-plus-year-old engine at that time.
Important to have adequate traversal options. Horses and other mounts, magic, boats, especially if it takes place around the Iliac Bay area. And look, I'd love to see some Black Flag tier battles at sea for pirate characters. But we'll see what happens. Another thing, Starfield has a ridiculous amount of alien creatures spread across the galaxy, and when translated to Elder Scrolls terms, I absolutely expect them to have an expansive...
All of these creatures, by the way, are fucking boring, and most of them are... If you did not know this, by the way, most creatures are reskins of other Bethesda games. Like, the crab that tunnels is a literal reskin mole rat, only without the tunneling animation. Because a Bethesda game having an animation for digging into the dirt obviously is too much to ask.
Bestiary, and not only that, but tons of Daedra to summon. With ESO and its successive expansions, there have been many creatures added, and look, ultimately, it would just be so awesome to have an experience where you're running through expansive lands filled with diverse creatures, and you can summon all kinds of Daedra from across the various realms.
I mean, that would be cool.
I am really excited to see this scale applied to Elder Scrolls 6. And it's not only just the creatures, but the diversity of environments in Starfield is staggering. There are so many moments where I just come to some tropical forest planet and just sit in awe. So many...
That's a 100% lie.
Morrowind tier alien environments as well. There is a lot, and Bethesda has proved they can do it. So with an Elder Scrolls 6, a multi-province game seems possible to pull off.
No, they can't. Okay. Also, I will explain a little bit more about these things. For example, what you're seeing right here looks kind of cool, right? But you need to remember one thing. The whole planet looks like this. You see this right here in front of your eyes? You can go 10 minutes in whichever direction, and you will never see anything but this. The planets... Even when they have when they have something except rocks on them, get boring in 30 seconds of running.
Even if not, using scale, they could expand a single province to massive proportions with all kinds of smaller biomes that transition between the larger ones, like some Nile River tier marshes in Hammerfell, heading through a desert into...
Well, to be honest, at least Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be way better than Starfield because of one simple reason. It's not going to have that many loading screens. It's still going to have loading screens, don't get me wrong. Seamless loading? Bethesda every time they hear that word shrivel in fear.
To some badlands, then carving through some savanna-like lands, dry forests, and then cutting through some mountains and entering into a paradise like a jungled coast, and then of course into the sea. There's just so much possibility. That was just following a river, for example. Starfield also approached the main story in a way that I feel many Elder
By the way, the way he described that doesn't even sound like a Bethesda game. It sounds like a shitty Bethesda game. Because the reality is, in Bethesda games, you always see something. You're going to a location, and chances are, you're going to spend 30 seconds running, and then you encounter something that you're, like, looking at, something that's interesting you, and you're considering, maybe I should go there. But that's not happening in Starfield.
Scrolls fans like us have been asking for. They vastly lowered the initial stakes and made it so that the player doesn't feel pressured to run through the main story, and instead you are given the breathing room to just explore and immerse yourself in the setting, to go navigate side quests and join factions. I love a good power fantasy, but for me it doesn't have to be connected to the main story. I don't have to be a Dragonborn. In fact, many of our role-playing builds are about specifically avoiding being a Dragonborn. I like having to work for the power fantasy. I really like the ability to be a nobody, a blank slate for your own creativity who is then thrust upon the world. On successive playthroughs of Starfield, I've often just ignored the main quest after delivering the first artifact to Sarah, and it's just so damn fun to go in and then be a space pirate or a bounty hunter. And in the fantasy setting of the Elder Scrolls 6, there are so many possibilities. By the way, just to clarify, I enjoy stakes, but I like the stakes to pick up in the story. The suspense should build to a peak of an act, and then lull again for some breathing room, and then it picks up again, and so on until the climax at the end. Otherwise, it can just railroad you constantly with this, oh my god, quick, dragons are coming, go, 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 and it doesn't feel like you have the moment to just relax and explore what the vast open world has to offer. And this is the peak Bethesda experience. It's the open world, it's the variety of things to interact with. The peak
Yeah. Everything that Starfield doesn't have, essentially.
Experience of Bethesda RPGs has never been the main quest. It's always the creativity and options that the player can engage in. And I, for one, am really happy they had this approach for Starfield, and I do hope it continues. The potential for Elder Scrolls 6 is huge, but it's gonna be a long wait, so settle in. However, if these leaks of an Oblivion remaster come to fruition, there will be some more nostalgia to bask in while we wait. Years ago, Michael and I made a video called The Ideal Elder Scrolls 6, a big video detailing things we wanted to see.
Okay, that's pretty much it. Well, that was Fudge Muppet. Wow, comparing Starfield to Fallout New Vegas, that's painful, man. That's truly painful. Also, yes, the best Bethesda game was not made by Bethesda. Ironic, I know. Anyway, this was Quizzer Says. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.